for about 10 days in advance, list of everything to be done. Guess who's finishing his Sunday morning lesson on Sunday morning? Me. So that was pretty easy there. Well, which one of you uh, is the pouter and which one is the shouter? Well, sometimes you get a couple of pouters, sometimes you get a couple of shouters. So you may put both for the answer, but who's the pouter? Who's the shouter in this relationship? Who is the spender? Who is the saver? I won't tell you which, but one of my daughters was a great saver until she married a man who was a spender. Then she thought, hey, spending's pretty cool. So she sort of changed her plans a little bit. But the whole idea is you take an inventory before the marriage to sort of know more about each other. Well, today is not about marriage. This kind of stuff is kind of fun. Uh, and the point of this question here is pretty serious and knowable because there's some things about your spouse to be or about your spouse that you better know. And if you don't know, there's going to be trouble down the road. Is there something your spouse can't stand? Something they detest? Something that makes their skin crawl? Well, you need to know that. Stay away from them. That's the third rail. And when a loved one says, please don't do that again, okay, it's time to back off. The rattlesnake just rattled, and don't push your luck. Don't go down that way. If a loved one says, if you do that again, I'm walking out the door, you had better pay attention. Well, today we're looking at things that God hates. That God says, this makes my skin crawl. I can't abide this. This is disgusting. This makes me angry. This is repellent. Well, our goal is to be more godlike, is to be more godly. And if we're going to do that, we need to know what God doesn't like as well as what God likes and wants. And the goal of that happens in marriage. They say couples who've been married a certain length of time start looking like each other or talking like or sounding like each other, have the same gestures. The two really do become sort of one flesh. The same thing happens in our relationship with God. If it's a real relationship, then we should become more like God, to look and sound and act more like God. But that starts, first step is just knowledge, just knowing when he says, I can't stand this, we had better stay away from it. Well, Proverbs 6:16 says, there are 6 things that the Lord hates, 7 that are an abomination to him. If you abominate something, you can't stand to be around it. So today I wanted to look at those things. Obviously, there's a lot more than just 6 things or 7 things, but we'll be looking at these. My plan as we wind up this series on what God is like and now what God likes and dislikes is to do Proverbs 6 today and then look at those things in the Gospels that made Jesus angry, that made Jesus' skin crawl. Well, we need to be aware of those things. Then we'll end this series and start a new one after that. But the church is the bride of Christ. That's where I was going with all of this. If we are the bride of Christ, we need to know what our spiritual spouse can put up with and what he can't. As a church, we need to be in line with his likes and dislikes. As individuals, clearly, need to do that too. If your spouse can't stand the smell of raw garlic, you don't pick up a clove and sit on the couch and smack it and talk to them, right? That's not a good plan. It's not going to work. If God says, this is an abomination to me, you don't sit down and smack that in his face. So that's where we're headed. Can you just eat your garlic when the spouse is not around? You can try that, but what happens? The smell comes out of your pores. It comes out of your breath. It just reeks from you. That's my wife's word, reek. You're reeking. Okay, so I had a delicious meatball sub sandwich down in Gainesville one time. I walked in the front door of our apartment. I just got in the front door. She was in the kitchen and she said, "What did you have for lunch?" So it took me a couple of days to get over that. Well, we can't hide from God. We can't sneak garlic into our diet and think He won't notice. He will. These are things we need to avoid. Don't want to make ourselves repellent to God. The good news is He says, can't stand these things. Don't let that be a part of it. Here's the scary part. The things we're going to look at today, the first three things especially, maybe all we get through today, are things that our culture has embraced. God says, I hate these things. And our culture says, they're great. And so that puts us in a place where we have to think. You know, Paul told the Roman church, don't be conformed to this world, but be transformed. And we've got to be transformed. But anyway, let's start. Six things the Lord hates, seven that are an abomination to Him. Number one, haughty eyes, followed by a lying tongue and hands that shed innocent blood. And then he goes on to a heart that devises wicked plans, feet that make haste to run to evil, like it, exciting, a false witness who breathes out lies, and one who sows discord among brothers. Seven things. But first of all, let's look at haughty eyes. It's significant. The first thing God says, I can't stand, it's not things we might guess. He doesn't say, first thing I can't stand is murder. Now, He does mention murder, but taking a human life isn't first. We might think, well, He might say adultery, breaking a marriage vow. He doesn't say that at all in this passage. What He does say, the thing I can't stand, first and foremost, haughty eyes. What are haughty eyes? Eyes that look down on other people. It's a high look. Hebrew is a very graphic language, and so instead of haughty eyes, it says high eyes, just looking down on other people. God hates that. He despises it. All kind of ways you can look down on other people. Sometimes people look down on others socially, don't live in the right neighborhood or don't drive the right kind of car, that kind of thing. Maybe they're not attractive enough. I don't want to associate with this person. They don't look appealing. Maybe they talk funny or look different. Just not the right kind of people. High eyes, haughty eyes would look down on other people. Maybe they lack the income or the education to count. But where do haughty eyes come from? Looking down on others. That's the first question. Where does it come from? Well, Proverbs 21:4 elucidates on the problem of haughty eyes. Haughty eyes and a proud heart. The lamp of the wicked is sin. Haughty eyes come from the heart. So whatever comes out through your eyes starts down here. And here's the problem. Haughty eyes become your lamp. That's how you see things. Have you heard people talk about this person sees the world through rose-colored glasses, rose-tinted glasses? That means they look at the world and they assume the world is filled with people just as innocent and well-meaning and kind as they are. So they think the world looks like them. What happens if you look at the world through haughty eyes, a heart of pride? How does it look? Well, pride is a perverse set of lens to look at the world through. It's like a looking glass, this pride. Think of it as a mirror. If you're prideful and you look in the mirror, you stand about 12 feet tall. Everybody else is about 2 feet tall. And they're kind of blurry. You can't see them very well. but you're in sharp detail, so it's all about you. Haughty eyes. Others are just invisible. They may be pawns to kind of move around or sacrifice, cannon fodder. Uh, Jesus says, "Blessed are the poor; theirs is the kingdom of heaven." But those are the very ones that haughty eyes keeps at arm's length. Yeah, okay. James talked about that in the churches that he was writing to, those Hebrew churches. He says, if a poor man comes in, you say, "Yeah, go stand in the back." If a rich person comes in, you say, "Oh, come sit right here, brother. Got a place for you." Haughty eyes, looking at people through the eyes of pride, the wrong frame of reference. Terrible sin. The problem is our world looks at itself and each other through eyes of pride. We tend to look at others in the political sphere. If you listen to politicians talking, they see individuals not as individual people. You're a representative of this class. You don't really have an identity. You're just another brick in the wall. And that's all we want you to be. It's just a brick in the wall. You're another seat in the pew. You're another taxpayer to send some money in. You have no real identity, just a use. That's wrong. You want bricks to be interchangeable. People are not. The eyes of pride, haughty eyes, reduces individuals to bricks, things to be used and moved around. What a sin. God hates that. You can't bear to think of yourself that way. So here's something else our culture kind of does. Nobody, the society says about everybody else, you're all just a member of some group, some collective, some class. So we say, I can't stand that. I'm not going to do that. So then what kind of response? You get people doing all kind of odd things. You start thinking, well, I'm really superior. You get these fantasy lives. I'm entitled. I'm better than. Weak-minded people get this inflated view of themselves. Have you ever noticed how the word pride is held up? It's a good thing to be proud. They don't understand it. But you don't want to be just a faceless nobody, which the world would be glad for you to be. So you can color your hair an odd color, or you can do something strange. You can do all kinds of body modifications. I was talking about the demoniac Wednesday night and looking at some stuff about that. This guy hid out in the tombs and cut himself with rocks, tormented. I looked at body modification and a desire to be unique or different. Here was this guy who cut off his ears and tattooed his face to look like snake skin. He wanted to look like a snake. I mean, it's bizarre and it's sad, but that's what happens in a world where you deny people their individuality. That should never happen. It should never happen, definitely, in a church. God doesn't want any of us to live like a refugee, a nobody, just another brick in the wall. Each of us are individuals and we matter. But the way to get out of that is not pride. It's a good biblical understanding. Get us out of the haughty eyes that others look at us with, or that we in turn turn upon other people. Romans 12:3 gives us a way to escape pride. Our world is one of devaluing others, feeling prideful about ourselves. Romans 12:3, for by the grace given to me, I say to everyone among you, not to think of himself more highly than he ought to think, but to think with sober judgment, each according to the measure of faith that God has assigned. Here's the truth. We don't determine our value. I can't stand up and say, I matter because I'm unique and I'm better than you. I'm superior in some way. We don't get to do that. It's not the way it works. This is what God says. You are worthy because I made you. You are not more worthy than other people because I made them. And that's the cure to so much of the haughty I problem. When I look at myself, I matter not because of what I have or what I do. I matter because God made me and loved me. When I look at others, don't look at bricks in the wall, people to be used for my purposes. I don't matter more than them because God made them. And He loves them just as much as He loves you. And I don't care if you're the greatest minister or if you're a president or if you're the lowliest being, all are equal in God's sight. So judge yourself with sober judgment. That doesn't mean you have to put on a false humility and say, oh, I'm nothing, I don't count, I'm just nobody. He says, with sober judgment, say, yes, I have these abilities. I'm going to give them to God. But I don't judge myself better than anybody else. And I don't judge them better than me. We're all one in God's sight. Judge yourself soberly. A sinner saved by grace, all on the same plane. Here's something ironic. When Jesus lives in us, as He's supposed to, dwells in us, richly dwells in us, the less we think about ourselves and the more valuable we become in God's eyes. Because we're not thinking about ourselves. We're not trying to make ourselves feel important. We're not working on our self-esteem or any of those things. We're just seeing the world through God's eyes. And if anything will increase our, quote, value, that would do it because we look more and more like His Son, Jesus Christ. When we walk into church, I've said this before, when you see another person, a little child, I love the way Glenn greets little children. They all love him. You see a little child, you see a visitor, you see just anyone, and you greet. We need to think this. Here is a creation of God, a life that's more valuable and more permanent. This one life, this one person is worth more than all the gold and all the governments in this world. This world is going to burn up. Everything in it will burn up. Each soul will live forever. We need to get our values right. People are what matter, not all this other stuff. When we look at everyone, we need to be looking for a heart of gold. Signs of godliness. That's what makes us valuable. So the world looks at the problem of life. It gives us the wrong diagnosis. It gives us the wrong cure. Pride is not the way out. Entitlement, all those things are wrong. Let's look at a few more verses. Philippians 2:3. How we get to that point, getting rid of haughty eyes. By the way, there's nothing more human than haughty eyes. C.S. Lewis once said that Christians are the only people who feel bad about pride. Everybody else thinks it's a good thing. Christians say, I shouldn't be prideful, and they notice that in themselves and work against it. But people who don't know God, they've rejected God, they celebrate pride. But pride is satanic, deceptive, rebellious. Got to be aware of pride. Philippians 2:3. Do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others more significant than yourself. Do nothing from selfish ambition. Isn't that a sign of pride? I can get ahead. I can make a great sale. I can get this done. Selfish ambition, doing it for yourself. Or conceit. I deserve this. Do nothing from those motives, but in humility count others more significant than yourselves. Counting is a choice. You decide. I'm not looking out for myself. I'm here to serve this person, to help this person. You learn a lesson about that with a 2-year-old, nearly a 2-year-old, 21-month-old in the house. why am I here? To serve that child, right? You've got to prepare them for life. You've got to provide for their needs. You got to serve them. That same attitude ought to cover every relationship. We're not thinking, how can I use another, but how can I serve someone else? Practical humility. Verse 4, let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interests of others. That's practical humility. What does this person need? Do they need a kind word? Do they need possibly financial help? What do they need? I need to provide that. That's humility, practical humility. Not thinking, what can they do for me, but what can I do for them? Romans 12:6 takes us further into this way. Live in harmony with one another, it says. Don't be haughty, associate with the lowly, never be wise in your own eyes. Live in harmony. Don't try to be louder, just try to harmonize. Don't be haughty, there's our word again, but associate with the lowly. That was a problem, by the way, in the church when they were still converting Gentiles and not sure what to do, and Peter arrived. The Jews still thought we are the chosen people of God, we're a cut above, and they didn't want to eat with the Gentiles because the Lord's Supper was partly a part of that. It became a problem. Even Peter was drawn into that. Paul says, Jews, yeah, you're part of God's chosen people. You had that heritage, but associate with us Gentiles. Don't look down on them. Very practical way. Never be wise in your own sight. Now that's tough for me because I always know the right answer. But we're all that way. We all think we know, and we all know what we know, but sometimes what we know just ain't so. Don't be wise in your own sight. Listen to others. That's part of humility. They got something to say. They can help you. That's the way. If we're going down to verse 5, which I didn't copy in Philippians, have this mind among yourselves, which is yours in Christ Jesus, who, though he was in the form of God, did not count equality with God a thing to be grasped, but emptied himself, taking the form of a servant. We can't think about, look at me, I'm being humble. We just need to be humble. Put others first. God hates haughty eyes. The next thing on God's list of things I hate. Verse 17, he hates haughty eyes. He hates a lying tongue. Lying tongue. Lies are God's sardines. Don't eat sardines and talk to me. I don't like to smell them. God says, I abominate lies, lying tongues. Psalm 31:5 calls Jehovah the God of truth. What does that mean, God of truth? John 14, Jesus says, I'm the way, the truth, and the life. And then he says, no one comes to the Father but through me. I'm the truth. If he's the truth, then no one comes to God except through the truth. And Jesus is that truth. John 17, Jesus prays for all of us, sanctify them through thy truth. Thy word is truth. God is all about truth, clarity. Satan is called the father of lies. So what company do we keep? More importantly, how do we lie? How are we tempted to lie? Here's the problem we face. In our world, it's taught us that all truth is relative. You can have your truth. I can have my truth. Just live by your truth and you'll be okay. Really? But that's what our world says. Well, we're not talking about differences of opinion. You're allowed to have a difference of opinion, but there is a truth. We can't say just define your own ideas about God. Hinduism, Islam, Manichaeism, Christianity, it's all God. Just accept it. As long as you're there, believing in a God, then you're okay. Ah, we're taught the only truth is there is no truth. That's logically impossible to hold both of those together, but that's it. Uh, but the inability to distinguish between truth and lies can lead us to telling lies. We don't mean to. But let's go through a few ideas here. What is a lying tongue? First of all, deliberate lies, something that's false, intended to harm somebody else and benefit you. Clearly, God hates that. I'll make up a story about you, hurt your influence because it will benefit me. God hates that, abominates that. Uh, it encompasses deliberate omissions that are designed to hurt someone else. That's why in a court of law, do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Sometimes we'll tell truth, we just don't tell the whole truth. And he hit me. Oh no, that's terrible. What's the whole truth? Well, you hit him first. Okay. So, but you forget that inconvenient fact, and you just focus on the fact that helps you make that point. But it gets more complicated. What about falsehoods that are uttered in fear? I think about Peter, denied Jesus 3 times. He was afraid. He was just scared. That's not quite the same thing as a lying tongue designed to benefit yourself and hurt somebody else. It was a sin. God gave him opportunity. Jesus gave him opportunity to repent. How many children have lied just because they're afraid of the punishment to come? You told them not to. They did it anyway. They see you're angry. Oh no, I didn't do it. Yeah, that's a little more understandable. We need to make those kind of distinctions. What about falsehoods that are told to protect somebody else? Protect their feelings, protect their life. How does this coat look? Janet says, oh, it looks fine. Well, should she tell me or not? That's up in the air. What about falsehoods we tell to protect another person? I don't know why this example popped into my head, but it did. Anne Boleyn was one of the wives of Henry VIII. And she, her brothers, and a group of 5 or 6 others were accused of plotting the assassination of Henry VIII. So he said they would all be put to death. For her, he said, she will be beheaded, which meant they will use a sword to take off her head instead of an axe. And you think, I think I'd pick the axe. But actually, swords were quicker and cleaner. Sometimes an axe took more than one attempt to do the job. So, but what happened when you were beheaded is you got on your knees, and of course you were blindfolded, and your hands were tied behind your back, and you sort of held yourself straight, and the executioner struck. Well, Anne Boleyn was on the pedestal there, raised area, blindfolded, kneeling. She was terrified. She was looking all around at the different sounds as things were moving around her. And the executioner said, don't worry, my queen. I'll ask you first. And then she sort of relaxed, and he struck. Was that lie a sin, or was it an act of kindness? It's a terrible story. I don't know why I thought of that story, but obviously the main focus of a lying tongue are lies that you tell deliberately and consciously for your benefit. Deliberate statements. But God hates all lies. Unconscious lies also repellent to him. If I'm all about money and I say, oh, he's just doing that for the money, I'm projecting my motives upon someone else. I may not be conscious of that, but that is repellent to God. It's an abomination to him. Watch my tongue. Watch ourselves. What are we saying? It may include repeating things we just hear. It makes a good story. I want to tell it, but I don't bother to ascertain if it's true or not. Well, Ephesians 4:15 tells us to speak the truth in love. We want to be truthful, honest, but also speaking it in love. Other ways speaking the truth is important. Proverbs 28:13 says this: He who conceals his sins does not prosper, but whoever confesses and renounces them finds mercy. The hardest truth to tell is a truth about ourselves. To tell it to ourselves, to tell it to God. I find that hard. Things I can't confess to someone else, I can confess to God. And that's the place to start. Speaking the truth just to God sets us free. The truth does set us free. Let's look at Psalm 15. We're going to run out of time here. O Lord, who shall sojourn in your tent? This mentions, I think it's 5 or 6 different things. Nearly half of them have to do with our tongue. Those are the ones who can dwell with God and travel in the tent with God. First of all, he who walks blamelessly and speaks truth in his heart. He's honest with himself. That's the first part of not lying, is don't lie to yourself. Who does not slander with his tongue. That is to use your tongue to damage someone else. Nor takes up a reproach against his friend. A reproach is something that's damaging to someone else. Maybe repeating a story. Most of the commentators were saying this. It refers primarily to saying something about a friend that may or may not be true, but will be hurtful. But you just find it interesting or funny or whatever. Oh, don't take up a reproach. The tongue. Number 4, the one who swears to his own hurt and does not change. Speak the truth. I'll do this for you. Word is my bond. That is not lying, not changing, not wavering. Speak the truth. All of these things with our tongue have to do with that. He who does those things will never be moved. We've got a couple of minutes, and then we'll just do this real quickly. Well, I made a mistake with the slide, but we're still in verse 17. Haughty eyes, lying tongue, and hands that shed innocent blood. Third thing that God hates, abominates, the shedding of innocent life. And our world is filled with sanctity of life issues. It's a tough world, and a lot of things are difficult. We don't know what to do. They talk about capital punishment, all of those things. We need to, first of all, notice that word innocent. Hands that shed innocent blood. Exodus 19 says, thou shalt not kill, thou shalt not murder. But this says innocent blood. That eliminates deliberate homicide. But even then, you get all kind of degrees of homicide. The law struggles with this constantly. 2nd degree, 3rd degree, what level of intent, what motives, striking out in anger or whatever. One case I read, it was terrible. These teenagers in Pennsylvania were playing Russian roulette with a pistol. But instead of pointing the gun at your own head, they pointed the gun at each other. And sure enough, one of them pulled the trigger and killed the other one. Took an innocent life. Through sheer teenage stupidity. I don't know what they were thinking. Daredevilishness. All of those. But we don't know in this world, I'm saying. God hates taking an innocent life. The focus there is on innocent. And the courts of law don't always distribute justice. It's fallible humans with a fallible justice system trying to determine and allocate degrees of responsibility. It's a wicked world. Does God forgive murder? Absolutely. Does he forgive taking innocent blood? Absolutely. Just ask the Apostle Paul, right? But we don't deliberately take life. Does this prevent self-defense? Probably not, right? Take innocent blood. If someone's breaking into your house, with a weapon? A home invasion, 3 guys with machetes? Well, that's not innocent blood. We hope we don't find ourselves in that kind of situation. What about the taking of an infant's life before it's born? Only someone who's in that situation knows everything in that situation. I think this verse would say that's not really an acceptable form of birth control. But what about the infant's ability to survive after birth? What about the mother's ability to survive? A tubal pregnancy will definitely kill the mother if it continues. So what I'm saying is there's no hard and fast, definite rule for these. God gives us his principle. You couldn't possibly write enough rules to cover every possible life situation. And we as individuals need to be aware of God's values. He values life. He values truth. He values humility. And if we're going to be married to God as his church, then those principles need to stay foremost in our mind. Assisted suicide. Who knows? Is withholding treatment? Is that taking an innocent life? If I want it taken, I think a very, very dear woman in her 90s, diagnosed with cancer, said, no more treatment for me. Well, that's not taking an innocent life, I don't think. What about ending life support, refusing life support? What about active steps to hasten death because of physical suffering? What about psychological suffering? We have to know God's value and stop at that point. I see our time is up. We'll finish with that maybe next week. We'll definitely go on to what made Christ angry. We need to know those things as well. We'll pick up next week. Thank you.